Hello.
Hey.
Good to see all of you.
Good to see you.
There's a lot of press out here, so it would be rude of me not to stop and take a few questions. I just want to say happy Monday. The weather is beautiful. We have another very busy week here at the White House, as you know. The Chancellor of Germany will be here later this week on Thursday for a visit with the President. The President will also be holding a roundtable with law enforcement later this week as well. Today he is packed with meetings and calls on all of the challenges our country faces, but there's a lot of good news on the economic front as well. You see the inflation report. Inflation is down. We saw a report this morning showing that incomes are up. Consumer confidence in May jumped to the highest it has had in a month jump in 4 years. So there's a lot of good news. There's a lot of work to do, and the President's hard at it. So why don't I take a few questions?
Karoline, what can you say to the Jewish community today to ensure that the White House is doing everything they can to keep them safe after the horrific attack in Boulder, and also the 2 Israeli embassy staff who were targeted just last week here in our nation's capital?
Yeah, we have seen 2 horrific cases of anti-Semitic violence in our country in the last 2 weeks, and it is unacceptable to this President and this White House. And rest assured to all Jewish Americans across our great country, this President has your back, and he's not going to allow anyone to take part in violent terrorism. It's acts of terrorism in our country. And that's what this case in Boulder, Colorado is being investigated as. Kudos to our FBI director, Kash Patel, for immediately calling this a targeted terrorist attack. That's clearly what it was. But I'd also like to point out that this administration has done more than any administration to curb this violence and to curb illegal immigration. We secured our border in record time, but we're also tightening up our visa process and our legal immigration process. And we know that this individual, this terrorist, was allowed into this country by the previous administration, was foolishly given a tourism visa, and then was illegally allowed to stay. These individuals are going to be deported, and we're not going to tolerate such violence in our country.
Karoline, last week you told me that Donald Trump was waiting until the talks between Russia and Ukraine today in order to make a judgment on whether or not Vladimir Putin wanted peace. Those talks have happened. Where does he stand, and is he willing to impose additional sanctions?
I'll let the President speak on that himself.
Today, the Russian and Ukrainian delegations met in Istanbul, but the Turkish president is suggesting that it's high time that leaders, President Erdogan, President Trump, President Putin, and President Zelensky meet in Istanbul. Is that something that President Trump would support and would be partaking?
Well, the President has said he's open to it if it comes to that, but he wants both of these leaders and both sides to sit down at the table together. And we saw them do that at the urging of President Trump today. But as for how the President feels about those talks and what took place there, I'll let him speak on that.
What's the President's reaction to that Ukrainian drone attack, stunning drone attack on Russian air bases? I'm sure he saw that. What's his reaction?
Well, look, the reaction is this war needs to come to an end. And this war has been brutal from both sides. Too many people have died. And the President wants this war to end at the negotiating table. And he's made that very clear to both leaders, both publicly and privately.
Are the trade negotiations still ongoing after last week's pause? And how are the negotiations with the European Union to avoid that 50% tariff?
Well, the European Union came to the table thanks to President Trump's threat of tariffs. And now we are seeing that they are negotiating in good faith with our delegation. So we remain hopeful and optimistic that a deal can be struck with the European Union. As you know, we are in discussions with many other countries around the world as well who understand the need to cut a good deal with this president and the administration. And Secretary Bessent and Secretary Lutnick, Ambassador Greer continue to work around the clock on this.
These attacks are concerned. You saw the firebombing of the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, as well as what happened over at the museum here in Washington, and now this most recent attack. Is there concern in the administration that there could possibly be some sleeper cells here in the United States? What type of pattern is the administration looking at as far as terrorist cells here in the United States?
Well, there's certainly a concern that the previous administration allowed way too many terrorists and illegal immigrants into the interior of our country. And that's why the Department of Homeland Security is working overtime to arrest, detain, and deport as many illegal criminals and terrorists that we can in the United States of America. And any act of violence will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
President Trump has talked about wanting to meet with President Xi for a long time. Kevin Hassett over the weekend previewed a possible conversation between the two of them, including possibly this week. Has that call been scheduled, and what is the president hoping to get out of that call with President Xi?
Well, sure. She asked about the potential call with President Xi. I can confirm that the two leaders will likely talk this week. And as always, when there are foreign leader calls, we will provide a readout of those calls. So we'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you, Karoline.